Welcome to yet another question and response session inside of this beautiful community, Vaginismus Sisters. This is an opportunity for us to gather. It's an opportunity for us to share parts of our stories and, more importantly, some of the challenges that we have that we are opening ourselves up to receive support about. And I think that question and response sessions like this are so powerful because we get to hear other sisters' questions that we could very often relate to, and of course gather some guidance, advice, tips, and tricks that will be helpful in actually navigating that particular challenge for yourself. Now, I say tips and tricks, but really the depth below that, the tips and tricks live here, but the depth underneath are the strategies, the principles, that are actually required as the foundation before we can ever implement a tip or trick and have it work for us. So you may have already noticed that a lot of what I talk about in my responses to your questions are the deeper layers, the principles that are important to be considered in that particular challenge. Just as a reminder, this is a question and response session. It's not a question and answer session. And that's because I don't believe any one of us has the answer that would be applicable to every single body out there. Hence, I get to speak to your questions from my personal experience, the guidance that I've come to in this work as I support you in overcoming vaginismus. And you get to take away whatever actually fits you and what feels like truth for you. So I invite you to gather responses from people in your life, supporters on your journey, and to really take away only that which sticks. I have found a lot of damage happen when I have asked questions of medical professionals who have pretended to know the answer. And I also at that time didn't trust myself for really looking inwards and trusting my own intuition. And hence I went down paths that led to dead ends. And I also did things that were not helpful in my journey. So we're going to begin here with a question. Just so you know, you can always participate in this question and response with me live on Zoom, or you can follow along in our Vaginismus Sisters private community, also live or on the recording. So I invite you to comment there with any follow-up questions or comments as we speak about this. So here is our question for today. It comes from one of you Vaginismus sisters, and I first want to acknowledge you and celebrate you for asking this question. I trust that many of us can relate to your experience. You are absolutely not alone in it. And I'm looking forward to giving you some foundation on how to approach this. Okay, so the question is there anyone like me who has never had penetrative sex because of the fear that it's going to hurt a lot? It has been 4 years of my marriage and I'm going through a lot of pressure to have kids. I just want to get pregnant ASAP. I searched a lot about vaginismus online and came to know about dilators. I started using them. Earlier, I used to feel anxious of the very thought of inserting anything in my vagina, but now I can dilate till the third size and I feel good about it. But the problem is that I don't allow my husband to touch my vagina. Only the clitoris is comfortable for me. Why so? How should I deal with it? Kindly suggest something that I'm hoping that will help me to move to the fourth dilator. Or kindly suggest to me something I'm hoping to move to the fourth dilator now, but still my husband's touch bothers me. It's not that I don't love him or trust him. I love him immensely, but it's not in my control. Oof, what a share. And again, thank you for your bravery here. I want you to know that this sort of thing with dilating progress, but not necessarily penetrative sex progress yet, it happens all the time. And this is one of the barriers that we might come across that is incredibly frustrating, because we do all of this work to be able to make the incredible progress that you have made, being able to get to dilator number 3 in a way that feels good, most importantly, like you said. And then when we try to translate our dilating progress over into the bedroom with our partner, what happens is that we have that closing once again, whether it's the closing of the legs, and maybe the closing of the legs and sort of like the lifting of the butt, or the automatic reflex of creating some more distance between us and our partner, even though that's the last thing we want. It may also be shaking of the legs. That's something that you may have experienced, and it's something that happens all the time also during pelvic exams. And in general, the anxiety and the fear that might be really present for you when your husband is approaching you, whether with his fingers, his hand, his body, specifically his penis. From what it sounds like, you feel comfortable with him touching your clitoris, but not moving downwards towards the vaginal opening. So let's unpack this. There is so much here, and we won't be able to speak on absolutely every single topic. For that, I invite you to have more personalized support and speak with me in more detail. But here are some of the main pieces to consider. First of all, you have done nothing wrong with how you've approached dilating to bring you to this space that you are today, with being at dilator number 3 and hoping to move to dilator number 4. I want to acknowledge you for that and celebrate you, because you have done all the right things to come to this place. What we're seeing is that jumping forward a couple of steps to try to involve your partner in a penetrative act, or even in an act of touching at your vaginal opening, it is not yet an experience that your body considers safe, that your subconscious mind, your body, and your nervous system are in alignment to at this moment of your journey. Again, I say this because you will get there, and all I'm referring to is that there is a slight gap between where you are now and the safety that you have landed in your nervous system related to dilating, and where you would like to be with landing safety in your body related to vaginal touch, as well as any sort of penetration attempt with your husband. Now, you mentioned that this gap seems really important to you right now, especially because you want to get pregnant. And that's fantastic. I love that for you. I love that this is part of the motivating factor. And of course, it also serves as part of the source of frustration, because you want this so bad. And for the reason of creating another member of your family together. And of course, that can feel like a lot of pressure as well. So I just want to acknowledge you for that you're in a very tricky situation with having this pressure in your life, wanting to jump that gap as fast as possible so that you can start a family. Now, my exploration of this in this session is going to steer away from the actual getting pregnant part, because it doesn't feel like, though you want to get pregnant ASAP, it doesn't feel to me that from your question that this is your focus. And hence, I'm not going to go into some of the alternative conception methods that do exist, even without us having penis and vagina sex just yet. If you'd like me to explore that, we can talk about that in another Q&R, because there are some options of how you can conceive when the penis in vagina sex is not yet an option. Okay, but parking that for a moment, let's talk about the gap. One piece to really keep in mind is that this gap is not going to be solved by purely a physical approach. So here, we're not talking about tying ourselves to the bed, tying our legs open, and having our partner, as lovingly as he already does, right, kind of like touch our vagina while we are propped open. This is not something, an experience that you will gain more safety with through pushing through it, right? Or through having more exposure to this kind of thing. Because every time we try this, but we feel like we feel in fear and our nervous system is not ready for it, we're literally going to be causing ourselves more damage, because we're going to be creating more disappointing, frightful on a subconscious level experiences that are going to lead us to go deeper and deeper into the cycle of pain. So we do not want to force this. And that's why it's important to not only approach this question physically, but to really look at the emotional components as well as the role of the nervous system here. So what does that mean? Sometimes it can be helpful to understand the reasons behind this body response. And it's critical to understand too that that's not necessary. So we can definitely have you be having PIV sex without ever understanding why your body responded this way from your partner's fingers approaching your vaginal opening. Okay, so that awareness on a conscious level does not need to happen. In fact, the conscious mind is responsible for only 5% of our behavior, whereas the subconscious mind is responsible for the other 95%. That means that in the emotional layers here, we need to start to create shifts in the subconscious mind related to the experience and the resistance that you're currently facing on a subconscious level. Because every part of your conscious mind wants this. Every part of your conscious mind trusts your husband. You love him immensely, as you said. Your relationship seems to be healthy and loving and supportive. And so the explanation there is that there is a subconscious barrier that is at play that we need to train to act in a different way. We're essentially kind of reprogramming the subconscious mind. But how else would we put this? We need to close the cycle on the emotions that have been suppressed inside of the body. So in all cases of any sort of misalignment between what we want consciously and what is happening subconsciously, there is a cycle of either big T or small t trauma, where trauma is anything that's less than nourishing for us. It's that cycle that needs closing. So something happened in our lives. We didn't have the capacity, capability, and spaciousness in our life to actually feel those feelings fully. It wouldn't have been good for us to feel them fully in that moment because it was too overwhelming and too intense. So what did we do? We stored away those emotions, kind of like as a snack for later. We literally stored them in the body because they were too overwhelming to be felt just yet. So we have suppressed emotional energy within our body and literally within the musculature and the fascia of our body. That suppressed emotion is what is creating the resistance to fully opening, fully surrendering, and fully feeling safe. We haven't yet found the access point to be able to feel those emotions, let them out to the surface, and therefore let the tightness that they had been causing be released. Because what does suppressed emotion get stored as in our muscles and in our fascia? It gets stored as literal physical tightness. And that's the case very often in our pelvic floor muscles. It can be stored in our shoulders. It could be the mysterious back pain that you have. All of that tightness is associated to some sort of emotional charge. So what is the path for us not holding the tightness that vaginismus really is? What is the path for us retraining our nervous system away from the freeze response that vaginismus really is? Well, it is closing that trauma loop and being able to express our emotions in a safe space so that they get released from the body and the tension can go on its way. And it's also down-regulating the nervous system to be in support of that. We can only find safety, which leads to curiosity, which leads to pleasure, right? The very same curiosity that you're looking for in order to be able to enjoy a sexual experience, to be able to enjoy vaginal touch. We need to find safety first before curiosity can be present. And downregulating the nervous system away from this hyperactive state is the way to do that. There are multiple tools related to subconscious healing, related to closing that loop, related to emotional expression, as well as release of tension in the body. One of those tools for downregulating the nervous system and releasing tension is literally called tension and trauma releasing exercises. This is something that I lead people through when we work together personally. It can be done in groups or one-on-one. These are the principles to how you can close the gap between where you are now to where you would like to be. We don't want to be forcing anything over here. And even when we have tried, because I have tried forcing it as well, we know that it doesn't work. So where would I like to go next? Let's talk about the difference between why you have success with dilating at number 3 by yourself versus why you don't yet have that progress with a partnered experience. Well, there are certain steps in between here that we can consider, and we can invite you to go on, whether solo or with your partner, to start to bridge the gap and to find a little bit more safety within these intermediary steps before we try this again. Okay, and here are some of the steps. First of all, there is this whole theme about the fact that we have found safety in being in control of things, being in control of our environment. And this can go really far back into our childhood, right? I personally found safety in being a high performer and putting my head down in the books and getting all the good grades because there was a lot of turmoil happening in another part of my life. And it felt chaotic over there. So I found safety in being in control over here. This may also lead to perfectionism tendencies and OCD tendencies, both of which I've experienced. And essentially, the theme that we're looking at is that we need to transition from feeling safe only while being in control to also being able to be safe in surrender. The difference between dilating on your own and having penetrative sex with a partner is that you are fully in control here. You're holding the dilator. You're deciding how fast to put it in. You're in control of your environment. Perhaps it's silent or not, but there definitely isn't another person with their very own decision-making, with their very own pace, with their very own intentions and perspectives in the picture. When your husband is right beside you, there is a subconscious part of you that doesn't quite feel safe, not because you don't love him, but simply because you haven't yet learned to feel safe in a state of surrender when another human being is involved. It's incredibly difficult to do that. In fact, penetrative sex of any sort is the most vulnerable thing that we can expose ourselves to as women in the world. We're literally allowing another person to be inside of us. And by the way, allowing another person to touch our vaginal opening is the step before allowing them to be inside of us. So it's no surprise that this too feels unsafe for you at the moment. So we've got to do certain emotional healing practices, nervous system practices to help you find safety in surrender. There may be memories to work with here related to past experiences. This work really does go deep, but the main common theme, difference between these two scenarios is that you are finding safety in surrender to a partner and with a partner. So what are some of the practical pieces that would be helpful for you to walk this path and tread this gap? One of those pieces is being able to incorporate your partner in what already works for you. What already works for you is dilating with dilator number 3. And you could even actually go back a few steps and say, okay, let's go to something I'm super confident with. Let's go to dilating with dilator number 1. How can you involve a little bit of those new factors, your husband, surrender, the communication that's necessary in order to feel safe there? How can you infuse your partner into dilating with dilator number 1? This is one of the practices that you could instill to start to find more comfort, more familiarity with your husband being part of the process. At first, this might mean You ask him to literally sit in the room next to the room that you're dilating in. Do you find safe? Do you feel safe then? Do you feel at ease when that's the case? If so, perfect, we move on. We can ask then for him to sit in the corner of the same room that you're dilating in, but to actually be reading a book while you're dilating. And you're going to start to gauge and notice, does this feel a little bit more uncomfortable? Okay, in what way does it feel uncomfortable? How can I find more comfort with this through that exposure, literally just his presence, but when he's not looking at you? The next step after you found safety there is to ask him to put the book down and now just start to watch you as you are dilating. Maybe this feels like an edge for you. And maybe there's some time that you get to spend there together in finding this safety when his body is very far away. Okay. After that, you start to involve him by him sitting on the bed and having a hand on your shoulder or on your leg as you dilate, and so on and so forth. So that's going to lead to him being involved in your dilating practice simply with dilator number 1, where he's the one holding the dilator as you are communicating to him to approach your vaginal opening with the dilator. You might start to feel like your protection mechanism is coming online as this happens. And now you simply have a little bit more information. My body is tightening when he's present. He's in control because he's holding the dilator and he's coming closer to me. Interesting. And there's pieces there that we could unpack through certain practices and conversations and games that you and your partner can play together. When you found safety there, perhaps he starts to touch your vaginal opening while he's massaging your clitoris and creating sexual arousal for you. Maybe you decide that you do that for yourself and you stimulate your own clitoris as he's inserting the dilator, because maybe that feels safer because he's focused on what he's doing with the dilator. You don't want him to be distracted, right? So you start to walk this road of bridging the gap between dilating on your own and what will later be you having penetrative sex with your partner. I guarantee you that if you take those couple of steps, what seems like backwards, you're going to be making a lot more progress, a lot faster, because you're letting your body go at its own pace of finding safety with each little new factor. Before you know it, you're going to have your husband being involved with dilating with dilator number 4, and then transitioning together with you to dilator number 5. And only as you start to get comfortable with this, and you continue moving through the dilators until you reach the dilator size that is your goal size, right? So that is the equivalent size of your partner's penis when it's erect. You are going to start to transition away from using a dilator to start using his penis. But here you might run into some challenges too. This also happens pretty often, but it's okay because you're capable of overcoming any obstacle. And here you might start to notice that holding his penis yourself and guiding it in is going to feel better for you to start. So that's part of the transitionary step there. It may also be important that you dilate with the dilator, that is your goal size. You take it out, and then immediately after that, you insert his penis. That will also give your body a little bit more confidence to know, I just did this and we're simply doing it again. Another element that's different between you, where you are now and where you will be, is the shape of what you're inserting. Currently, the dilators are rounded, right? Your partner's body is not rounded. It looks like a penis. It's got a head of the penis. To me personally, this was a factor that was fearful to me. Even though at first I didn't realize it, I noticed that my body was responding differently to the shape of the penis than I was responding to a dilator. So what can you do here? Well, you can hope for the best and just keep trying, or you can also think about this very same notion of how can I break this down into little steps? So what if you get a dildo that is a realistic kind of dildo and has the shape of the penis, and instead of using your partner's body at first, you start to get familiarized with the shape of the dildo, because it is closer to using a dilator than it is to when you're trying to use your partner's real body. So again, that's another little piece that'll help you bridge the gap. So we talked about a lot there, right? Again, we have to go back to the principles. The principles are finding safety. The principles are working with our body rather than against it, allowing for the nervous system to be in a downregulated state. And there are specific practices for this that are important to consider, right? There's lots of ways you can downregulate the nervous system. And still there are some that I feel are incredibly helpful for also releasing the stored tension that is stored in the pelvic floor muscles. Another thing I want to mention here is the communication with the body that we need to start creating as a very clear channel. You need to know, and I'm sure that you already have this skill very well created for yourself because you've gotten to where you've gotten with dilating. And still, it's important to remember that you need to know when your body is a yes to any sort of sexual touch or penetration versus when it is simply a no to it. Our body speaks to us through physical sensations. It doesn't speak through language. So a no to you may feel like something in your body. It may a ball in your throat. It may feel like constriction in your chest or tightness in your stomach. Whereas a yes may feel like a little bit more openness, expansiveness, butterflies in the stomach, excitement, curiosity. Those last two aren't physical sensations, but it's important for you to recognize, how does curiosity feel physically for me in my system? Does it feel like my heart beating a little bit faster, but also with the butterflies in the stomach, which means it's not anxiety, it's excitement, right? So you get to find out, because here's the thing. If you and your husband lay in bed together, and at whatever stage you are here with closing the gap, you're about to do a practice, and you start to notice all the physical sensations in your body that say, I don't want this, I'm not ready. If you honor that no, and you say, okay, body, I hear you. We're going to pause. We're going to stop. In fact, we're not going to do this today. And in fact, if you do this 10 times over, on the 11th time, your body is going to have learned that you have its back, that you are hearing, you're listening, and you're hearing its no. And now you have taken over the responsibility to also take care of it by also expressing the no. You are listening, and you are not pushing through that boundary that your body set for you by saying no. Because vaginismus essentially is our body saying no for us. When we take back the responsibility and we tell the body, we assure the body, you don't need to say no for us anymore. I've got you. I'm going to do this for us. I now have the capacity and capability to hear your no and to verbally express it. And hence, I am taking care of us. It is only at that time that the body can authentically bubble up its first yes. So after 10 times of saying no, you're going to have the opportunity for the body to authentically say, ooh, okay, I trust you. I feel safe because every other time I said no, you listened to me. So now I'm going to say yes, and I'm so excited. Maybe a little bit apprehensive, but it's going to be an authentic yes. And then as you hear the yes for the first time, you can say, oh my goodness, body, thank you. I celebrate you. I'm feeling this yes. I love that you're a yes because I'm also consciously a yes. And when those yeses align, you get to take action. And that 11th attempt is going to be so amazing. It's going to feel like such big progress. And that progress is only going to grow from there because you honored the first 10 no's. If those first 10 no's were no's, but you tried to push through every time, guess what? The body will never learn that you have its back. 5 years later, you're going to be pushing through those no's, and you're going to be disappointed in the body that it's a no, rather than celebrating it for protecting you. And still the body is, right? In that case, when the no's are not honored, the body is going to continue protecting you. And it's going to continue tightening and responding and bracing and avoiding and all of the other stuff that we do. unconsciously because the body tries to protect us. So this is the last very important piece here, is this concept on you've got to honor your mind and your body and your partner's got to honor your mind and your body and himself or herself. And that's the path to finding those yeses. That's the path to opening, to allowing, to receive. That's the path to finding safety and surrender and letting go, relinquishing control and saying, thank you, right? Me having control over everything in my life has really served me. But now that I'm trying to be a person who experiences penetrative sex, I can see how this does not serve me anymore. So I'm going to be grateful for how it served me in the past, but I'm going to say, this is part of my past. I'm recreating a new future. I'm stepping into a new identity of the woman who can have all the forms of sex that she wants and who can claim her sexual liberation. So to summarize, we're not entirely sure why it happens. It would be interesting to be able to go on that exploration together through personal support. And still, it's not necessary to know why it happens. There are many tools that you can use to bridge the gap. And most importantly, be hopeful that those tools are going to be fruitful. And please don't be hard on yourself that your progress hasn't looked exactly as you wanted it to be. I know it's frustrating, but I hope that from this exploration together, you feel this new burst and spark of hope, because there is so much hope ahead and there's so many amazing things waiting for you, with you being able to conceive one day in the natural way, if this is the way that you prefer, for you to be able to enjoy PIV sex with your husband, for you to be able to enjoy any sexual explorations, and to also step into a stage in your life of sexual adventuring, rather than potentially the stage you might consider yourself in to be right now of sexual healing. And making that jump from sexual healing to sexual adventure is pretty exciting. And I know that that is part of the path for all of us. So thank you for asking this question. Thank you for everyone listening here for taking this time for yourself. You literally just invested time and effort into something that can be the absolute breakthrough for you. There's a lot that I shared, and all of these components are principles. And I invite you to continue coming back to the principles rather than trying to grasp onto the tactics, the strategies, and the tips, because the foundation is important before we ever try to implement some new tip or trick. Okay, it all comes back to safety. We will see you again in our next Q&R session. And yeah, I'm just celebrating you big time. If you have any follow-up questions, I am a real human. I am right here on video with you. You can reach me by email. You can reach me as part of our private Facebook group, Vaginismus Sisters. You can also reach me at Vaginismus Sisters on Instagram, or on my YouTube channel, which is called Katrin with Love. And I look forward to witnessing you in your growth, in your progress, and celebrating you as you claim your sexual liberation. Okay, chat soon.